Everyone told me fishing the mudline here at Westwood Lakes can be an absolute nightmare. I cannot believe how many fish are in my peg off such a small amount of bait. Well, they weren't wrong. That is absolute carnage. So you're joining me here today at the absolutely lovely Westwood Lakes. Now, this is actually my first time I've ever seen the venue, simply because of just how far away it is from my house. It's over 200 miles, so it's not a venue that is accessible for me to come to regular. Now, I've heard so much about the venue in obviously previous FishOMania finals, and I've been very lucky enough to qualify for the FishOMania final this year. So it's only right that I'll come and have a little practice. Now, I've heard so much about the fishing, and everybody has basically said the same things to me. You get so many fish in your peg here because there's simply so many fish in the lake, and they are very, very difficult to catch. But it's always best to come and have a look for yourself and try and work something out for yourself, because there's no better thing to have than confidence in the way that you're fishing. So yeah, I've come here today. I'm sat on peg 18. I didn't really know anything about the peg, so I thought I got a bit of wind coming down here towards me, and it's got a nice distance across, so I thought it looked really nice. So I'm just going to sit down and have a go here. I've plumbed up, my bait's all prepared, so I'm literally ready to go. I've prepared some ground bait, some mica pellets, I've got some live maggots and worms, and some expander pellets for the hook. Now I'm going to fish today as if on the mudline, like I have done at other venues in the past, like Tunnel Barn and places like that. And hopefully what I've learned in the past at venues like Tunnel Barn will catch me a few today. So I'm literally just going to go straight into it. I'm going to start off with 3 live white maggots on the hook, and I'm going to start off kinder potting a 50-50 mix of micros and ground bait. I think when you don't really know a venue, starting with like just 50-50 is a great starting point, because you can work on the percentages. You can go one way, you can go more micros, you can go more ground bait. Now I've plumbed up across and literally touching the mud, i.e. the mud line, it's 11 inches deep, which is really nice for me. I would probably prefer it if it was 3 or 4 inches deeper, but 11 inches touching the mud, if the fish come into there, like what a lot of people said they will, they should be catchable. Mine. This is my first time at the venue, and a lot of great anglers have said to me just how difficult they are to catch. So we're going to start off, like I said, 11 inches deep. I'm going to put my float virtually touching the mud, and I've started with a large Matrix flexible toss pot, and I've just filled that up with 50-50 ground bait and micros. And it'd be really, really interesting to see just how quickly these fish come into your peg, because everybody I've spoke to said when you feed lots of bait, they just come flying into your peg. They live in your peg, and they're very difficult to catch. A lot of people foul up fish when they come to this venue. It's very silty down the middle. It's only like 2.5 foot deep here down the middle, and very, very silty. So it'll be just interesting just to see how quickly they'll come into your peg. So I've potted that in, and I've had no signs yet, but obviously that's only been a few seconds, and I'm sure they will start coming in at some point. There is a little bit of undertow today, which I can see straight away. It's just pulling from left to right, which makes sense with the direction of the wind. Now it's really important when you do this style of fishing to just make sure your float is right over the top of that little bundle of bait. You can imagine in only 11 inches of water, and I'm putting my pole pot under the water to pop my bait in, you're fishing very, very accurately there. Not had anything come in quite yet, but I'm sure they will at some point. Obviously, if we don't get any fish come into our peg, then I can start thinking about what bait I'm putting in. I.e. if I want to get more fish into my peg, I'll up the percentage of ground bait. So maybe I'll go to like 70% ground bait and 30% pellets. And if I'm getting too many fish in my peg, which a lot of people said I would, maybe go into all micros. Oh, there we go. So now I'm just starting to get a few indications. Oh, and there we go, straight away. That one actually pulled my elastic out, so it was a really, really aggressive bite. But that's a good start. Feels like an F1. But straight away, I can see how quickly those fish came in on my bait. It was probably under a minute before I saw 2 tails there, and that's exactly what everybody's been telling me. It might be a carp, might be a small carp. I think this lake, I'm not quite sure, but I think this lake is 50% carp and 50% F1s, but that's a great start. That's straight in the mouth and a really aggressive bite, so that's a really good start. Now obviously the first few fish might all be nice and easy to catch like that, but we might get in a situation that after 4 or 5 fish, with the volume of bait building up in my peg, they might become more difficult. And I'm just looking back across as I've netted that one, and I can see some mud coming up and they're still in my peg. So it shows you one little kinder pot, or one large kinder pot, Matrix large kinder pot of bait is enough bait to keep them in your peg even after you've caught one. So I'm going to have to be really, really cautious with my bait today. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to go across now and try and catch you one more, and then I'll briefly talk through the pots I'm using, the rig and the bait. But I've got a feeling, just like what everyone said, look at that, how many fish have come into my peg there off one kinder pot of bait. That's incredible. So we're going to give it another pot. I'm just going to dip my pot under the water, let the water flush in from the back of the pot in through the holes, and let the water flush my bait out. Now when you introduce your bait like that, it becomes very accurate, as long as you haven't got too many fish in your peg washing the water around. But look, they're on that immediately, already mudding up. And straight away I can see what everyone said about getting lots of fish in your peg and disturbing the bottom. I can already see that. On most venues, when you go up into 11 inches of water, you don't get that much silt problems because the bottom's really, really hard. But I can see already just how much silt's in the peg here. So that was a little liner. That fish spooked out of my peg there. Oh, that was a bite. That might have been a liner, that. Now, I'm not going to be too slow with the refeeding today, because that bait already, even though I put it in like probably 25 seconds ago, that's going to be washed all over the place now with those carp coming in. So even though I feel like I don't really need to feed to get more fish in my peg, I need to try and centralise them to try and get one to take my hook bait. If my bait's been blown over a 2 foot space, then getting them to try and pick out your hook bait when the water's this colour is going to be very difficult. So if I don't get a bite within like the next like 15, maybe 20 seconds, I'm going to come back in and try feeding again. But I've got a feeling today, looking at that already, that they're going to be tricky to catch, and this is exactly what everyone said. I might have to try a smaller pot, because in general, when I've done this style of fishing in the past, if you're fishing with a certain size pot and you're getting too many fish in your peg, the thing to do is to go onto a smaller pot. Well, that was another decent indication. Just flew under, but not there. It's probably a liner, but I can already see what everyone's on about. Like, I've put 2 kinder potfuls of bait in, and there's an absolute abundance of fish in my peg. I've caught one in the mouth and missed 2 bites this chuck. So what I'm going to do now I can be pretty much sure that that bait now has been blown everywhere. So I'm just going to refeed again and try and get one. Just going to overfill my pot and then just press it into the pot. It's very, very important when you're doing this style of fishing to get the compression of your bait right. So what you want to be able to do is turn your pot over and for your bait not to fall out. But then once you've put your kinder pot into the water, you want the water to be able to flush the bait out very quickly. If you put it in there too hard, the water won't flush it out of the pot. And if you put it in there too soft, as you turn the pot over, before it gets to the water, the bait fall out. So what you want to be able to do is get the compression right to do exactly what just happened there. I put the pot into the water, and within 2 or 3 seconds it's totally flushed out. That's really important when you're doing this mudline fishing. And I feel like the anglers that can get the compression best normally catch the most of this style of fishing. It's quite easy when you're doing it with 50-50 ground bait and micros, because the ground bait and the pellets are quite sticky, and it's quite easy to do it. It gets a little bit more tricky when you do it with just ground bait or just pellets. But I can 100% already see, and I've only been fishing a few minutes, exactly what everyone was telling me. So I've gone over, I've caught that one F1, and then I've got, all of a sudden, I've fed 3 times of a kinder pot, and I've got an absolute million fish in my peg. Right, so there's a few steps now that I've got to try, and I've got the rest of the day to work out, i.e. I can change my hook bait, I can go to worms, I can go to expanders, and I can also change the percentage of my feed. So go to more micros, less ground bait, and also I can try and change the size of the pot. Oh, that was a little indication. But you can see there, it's just a massive fish in my peg. Probably looking at things, you could just feed micros there now, and maybe fish with like an expander on the hook might be better than putting any ground bait into your peg whatsoever. I'm just going to give it a couple more minutes. Hopefully I'll get another one, but if I don't, it doesn't matter. I need to make some changes, and I'm just going to run you through the bait, the pot and the rig that I'm using. But I can see like a towel to my left, I can see a towel to my right. But in this situation, obviously it's going to be very difficult for the fish to pick out your hook bait, because, oh, that was an indication. Yeah, that's one. That's another F1. So even though we've got a lot of fish in our peg, and I can feel like they're going to be very difficult to catch, I've still caught 2 in the mouth. Oh, that one's just popped off, but it was in the mouth there. It was definitely in the mouth. So that's a good sign in a way that I've caught 2 in the mouth. But there's definitely some work to do on that line. But what I'll do, whilst I'm in quickly, that was a shame that one popped off, but whilst I'm in quickly, I'll just talk you through the bait and how I've prepared it. To start off with, I've used Sonia Bait's Match Method Mix for my ground bait choice. I love this ground bait for this style of fishing because it's expander based, so it takes on a lot of water and becomes very heavy. I've got some Fishery 2mm pellets. Now, normally what I do with my 2mm when I fish for F1s is just totally drain them in water and let them blow up to be as big as possible. But what I've found when I've done a little bit of testing with pellets in a tank before is when you blow them up to full potential, they do waft around and they take a long time to sink again. So what I've done today, I've actually prepared them almost like I'm fishing a feeder, where I've drained them in water, left them for like a minute to 90 seconds, then drain all the water off totally. I've got some white live maggots, which is probably my favourite bait for on the hook when I'm fishing like this. I feel like the colour really does stand out in this dirty water. I've got some worms, which can be absolutely brilliant. If it's the right time of year, for some reason, fishing with worms on the hook can be absolutely amazing. And I've also done some Sonia Bait's 4mm expanders. Now, if I find that feeding just micros is good enough to get lots of fish in my peg, putting a 4mm expander on the hook can be very, very good. So that's the bait, that's just how I've prepared it. I've measured it out absolutely perfect. I've got my 250mm cup. I've done a scoop of ground bait, a scoop of micros, put it in a separate tub like that. Now what I can do with that, I can actually add more water to it to get it a little bit wetter if I feel like I need to. But I've started off with it quite dry, so it's nice and compressed in that pot. So that's the bait that I've used. That's how I fished elsewhere on other venues when I'm fishing up to a mudline. And it does work absolutely brilliant because you can adjust your bait as you fish. Now, the rig itself is very, very simple. To start off with, I'm using one of our new hooks, which is a size 14x1, ultra sharp, very, very strong, but still quite fine. A 4-inch hook length of 016 soft steel. Then just at the top of my 4-inch hook length, I've got 8 number 9s on the line, which is exactly what this float takes. 020 main line and a 0.4 Matrix Mudline float. Now, hence the name, this is what they've actually been designed for. They're really short in size, fiberglass stem, which makes it really stable, with a 2.5mm bristle, which makes it very visible. When you get lots of fish into your peg, the last thing that you ever want to do is have your float drifting around and going under at false bites at liners. Just above the float, I've got 2 number 8 back shots spread out, one at 10%, one at 40. And then I've got the Matrix slick elastic, which I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is 14 to 16 with a little short dacron. So a very, very simple rig. The only one real important thing about this rig is that the bulk is just all at the top of the hook length, because you're going to get lots of liners and lots of indications like what you've seen me do there. And the last thing you want is a rig that takes a long time to settle again. You want a float that just goes boom, back into position. So that's the rig I've used, that's the bait I'm using. I've started off with a Matrix large flexible toss pot, but the great thing about the Matrix pots, they come in a few sizes, and you actually get the little add-on bits as well. So you can make it bigger, you can make it smaller, you can really adjust the size of the pot and how much bait, exactly how much bait you're putting in. I have set my big potting kit up just in case you need to put more bait than a kinder pot full in, but I don't think we're going to have that problem today. I touched on it a minute ago about the compression of your bait, and I'll just go into it in a little bit more detail. When you put your bait into your pot, what I like to do is overfill it and then just compress it into your pot, which I'll show you now, like this. So it's overfull, and you just compress it so that your bait doesn't come out if you tip your pot over, but then once you get out there, you put the whole pot under the water, and then the water flushing in through the holes on the back of the pot will push that bait out within 1 or 2 seconds. That's really, really important. If you put it in there too tight and the bait doesn't come out straight away, not only if it's windy you're spreading your bait about, but it just wastes time. You want to be nice and quick and efficient at this type of fishing. So that's the bait I'm using. That's the rig I'm using. Obviously I've caught those, well, I didn't catch the second one. That was just really unlucky that it popped off. But that was in the mouth. So I'm gonna take that as a caught fish. And I'm just gonna try and catch you one more. I'm just gonna go within 2 or 3 inches of the bank and put my float right on top of that and just see if I can get one more. And then once I hopefully catch one more here now, once I catch that fish, then I'm going to start making some changes for the rest of the day. I'll try worms on the hook, and I'll start messing about with pot size and the percentage of micros and ground bait I use. But what I've exactly done here now, fishing with 3 white maggots on the hook. Oh, that was a little indication. Fishing with 3 white maggots on the hook, fishing with this pot. Oh, there we go, there's another one. Fishing with 3 white maggots on the hook with this size of pot, with the rig like that, plumbed up in 11 inches, is a great starting point. If you go to any venue in the country with F1s and carp in it, and you've got a mudline that you can fish to, this is a really, really good starting point. Well, there you go. That was 3 fish fairly quickly, which is a great start, to be honest. I've caught 3 F1s. Everybody did say to me there's a lot of carp in there, so there's a very good chance I could hook some carp in later in the day. But how I've started fishing there with that bait, that rig, where I've plumbed up in 11 inches, touching that mud, is a great way of starting your day fishing a mud line. And hopefully for the rest of the day now I can carry on fishing, carry on catching a few like what I did there, and make some adjustments and learn a little bit more. Right, so we've had a brilliant start, but I'm going to make some changes because I'm getting lots of fish in my peg. When I started off with that 50-50 mix, there was just fish immediately in my peg, and it did take a little while once I fed to get a bite. So my first change I'm going to make is I'm going to change to all micros, and I'm going to put a bit of worm on the hook, because in the past when fishing for carp and things like that, when I've changed to all micros. For some reason, I don't know why, but putting a piece of worm on the hook always seems really good with micros. So that straight away I can see fish in my peg on those micros, which is brilliant, a really good sign. Because in general, if you can feed my just neat micros and still get the fish in your peg, in general, they're a lot easier to catch. Because you've got to imagine ground bait will waft around and create a big cloud. But the fish can be very difficult to catch once you get that cloud. So that's a good sign that they've come in on those micros, but I didn't have a bite straight away. Just going to give it a minute though. The problem is with this style of fishing, and why everybody gets so frustrated with it, is you get lots of fish in your peg. And I can see already that I fed that volume of bait, and you can imagine those micros have already been wafted around and there's going to be a big area of bait. And that's why sometimes you've got to feed really, really regular to try and concentrate the fish to get a quick bite and then repeat the process. So that's a good sign that micros are still bringing them in the peg. But what I might try next, Chuck, is I might just drop down to that small kinder pot and just fill it with micros and just start fishing with the small kinder pot. There's absolutely hundreds in my peg there now. What you have got to remember though, I am pleasure fishing, so in a match circumstance, it might be a little bit calmer than this, because this is very, very all over the place at the moment. But people did say it's the same in matches, to be fair. You just get masses of fish in your peg. So now I feel like that bait is wafted around everywhere. Oh, that was a proper bite. So that was a little bit longer than what I wanted really, but in the end I still got a bite. And that was on all of those micros. I'm happy with the elastic I've chose so far. It feels nice, it feels really, really nice. I thought it might be on the touch on the heavy side if I'm catching more F1s than carp, but even for these F1s I'm catching now, it does feel really, really nice, to be fair. Oh, someone's just kicked off a little bit. They do really fight in here though. Oh, that one's just popped off. That might have been foul looked at, that's why it kicked off like that. Right, so obviously foul looking is going to be a problem here, and everybody said it. So I'm just going to change that kinder pot now. I'm just going to go on to the Matrix small one, or the medium one, and just put a little bit less bait in the peg. Because I got a feeling today you're really not going to have to put lots of bait in the peg to catch some fish. But I'm glad that's happened. I'm glad we foul looked one, because everybody seemed to tell me that foul looking is a problem. Now we can work on that and just see if we can start hooking a few more in the mouth. I got a feeling that this smaller pot is going to be better. So let's give that a go. Oh, just nicked one then on dropping my rig in. So there we go. Right, that slightly smaller pot now, all micros. So that bait is flushing out, absolutely perfect that. See if we get a slightly quicker bite with that less volume of bait in the peg. Right, straight away, that does seem a little bit calm. Oh, that was a proper bite, I think. It does seem a little bit calmer with that smaller amount of bait in the peg. Now, I've had a really aggressive bite then, and I can tell that that bait has probably been wafted around everywhere. So I'll just give it like 10 to 15 more seconds. Oh, that did look like a proper bite as well, to be fair. I won't going to give it much longer, and I'm going to feed again. Just centralise that bait. There's so many fish in my peg over there, it's ridiculous now. But I haven't foul looked one this chuck day. I've missed 2 really aggressive bites. Oh, look a liner that. I've missed 2 really aggressive bites, but I feel like I need to feed again now to just try and centralise them again. Try and get them with their head facing at my hook bait. Because when your bait wafts around everywhere, then they could be looking in different directions. So I'm going to try and get them all looking at my hook bait. Just going to go with all micros again, because if you can feed like that, that's got to be better than putting ground bait in this circumstance. So be careful where you drop your rig in, because you don't want to go hooking fish as you're dropping your rig in. So I've just stuck with that smaller part, stuck with the worm on the hook, and then I'm probably going to stick with that pot now, because there is masses of fish coming in the peg. I'm just going to have a little play with my hook bait as well. Oh, there we go. That's the first one on all micros. Oh, that one's come off as well. Right, so the 2 that I've hooked after changing to micros have both been foul hooked, which is a bit odd. What I'm going to do, I'm just going to have a quick go with all micros of 3 white maggots on the hook. Give that a go. And then the last thing I can do is then put expanders on the hook. So I'm just going to have a quick go with those 2 hook baits. It's really important that you take your time when you fill in your pot as well, because you want it to flush straight out with the water. But you don't want it to be stuck in there too sticky. Right, let's feed again. So I'm going to go over all micros. That's just popped straight out, those micros. That's lovely. Let's see if I can get my rig in. Right, so micros didn't have the effect that I wanted. I thought putting micros in my peg instead of that 50-50 mix, I thought would calm it down, but it didn't really. So what I've done, I've gone back to my original mix and I've really wetted it down. So it's almost like a putty. And I'm just gonna pop that in just to see if that will go to the bottom and stay in almost in a dollop, just so I can try and centralise the fish a little bit. Because I feel like if I put neat micros in here or any sort of like dryish bait, it's just gonna get, within 5 seconds of it putting it in, it's just gonna get wafted around. So the last thing I wanna try is this, having my bait really wetted down into a putty. Oh, there's one straight away. Oh, I just got a feeling that's gonna be good, that. Because you can imagine if like any sort of dry bait or any sort of bait that can get wafted around here, it's just gonna get, like with that many fish in your peg, it's just gonna get wafted around immediately. And that is absolutely perfect. That was the right timing. That was perfect, straight in the mouth. So I'm just gonna have a couple more goes fishing with that wet mix and see if that was just a bit of a coincidence, but that was absolutely perfect. I've gone back to my 3 white live maggots. I'm just going to stick with that putty mix. With this, obviously, you don't have to worry too much about the compression in the pot because it's going down in a dollop. So as long as it comes out really, really quickly, that's all that matters. So be careful with your rig. Get right on your mark. Oh, that wind's just got up, so just be patient. Get right on that marker and then put that ball in. That's another one straight away as I was putting my bait in. But I don't know if it's fair to say it. That already seems a little bit calmer, my peg. You can imagine if you come here today and fed neat ground bait, you would just have an absolute nightmare with fish coming in your peg and not being able to catch them. So that wet mix already seems really, really good. So that's my first carp of the day as well. And when I'm looking back across after I'm like netting fish, before I could see tails and coming out of the water swirls, and I can't see it now. So with that little putty mix, that seems a lot better. Just gonna have one more go. And if I can get one pretty quickly this chuck, feeding with this, then that's, for me, that's pretty conclusive. That fishing with that 50-50 mix, wetting it right down, 3 live maggots, all of a sudden I've gone from a peg with loads of fish in it and not being able to catch them to catching them, which is a great start. Obviously there's still going to be lots to learn in future goes, and it'd be nice to come and do it in a match, but that seems really good at the moment. So I've just put my little putty mix in. Try and get your rig in as best you can. That wind's just got up now, which is making it pretty tricky. And I couldn't get my rig in straight away then because the wind got a bit bad. "100% though, putting my bait in like that, my peg's a lot calmer. You can, oh, that seemed like a proper bite then. You can see straight away, there's literally hardly any tails out the water. There's an odd swirl, which is bang on, it's what you want, because obviously you still want them coming in your peg, but having your bait that wet will definitely cut down all of the cloud from the ground bait. It will keep your bait a lot more condensed in a small area, which improves your chances of a fish coming in the right direction to catch in the mouth. So there we go, there's another. Wow, I'm really happy with that. That's just happened because I've seen it before. Putting your bait in like that can be brilliant when you've got lots of fish in your peg. Look at that, another one, smack in the mouth. That's so perfect now. If I could get my peg like that in the FishOMania Final, that would be absolutely amazing. So straight away, not been fishing long, like 20 minutes, half an hour, but started off fishing how I do at Tunnel, and I did catch a couple, but you could tell within a certain amount of feeds, my peg just went mental. And then I changed to my micros and worms, and that didn't seem great either. I fouled at the first 2, and then I've just wetted my bait down like that, and that seems absolutely brilliant. So within half an hour of coming and fishing, I've learned a lot already. I've got the rest of the day to just keep swapping and changing until I find something that's even better, but that seems really good so far. Well, there you go. You can see just how important it is to swap and change things as you're fishing. If you feel like things aren't right and you're not catching at a quick enough rate, It's really, really important to change what you're doing. Obviously, foul looking today, fishing like this with that many fish in my peg, it's going to be apparent, and you're going to foul look a few fish, but you can see the changes I made just after. Every time I made a change, I gave it 2 or 3 goes to see if it is really apparent on what you've changed is good. But that last change I made, wetting my bait right down, fishing with 3 white maggots on, was absolutely brilliant. I caught 3 straight away in the mouth. That was absolutely perfect. So hopefully, if you do make some changes with your fishing, swapping and changing, and making these sort of changes, hopefully that will catch you a few more fish. If you enjoyed this video today, don't forget to hit the like button and head over to the Matrix YouTube fishing page. Hit the subscribe button to keep up to date with all the most recent fishing videos.